All right, deep divers, are you ready to go deep? Today we're plunging headfirst into the surprisingly profound world of, wait for it, SpongeBob
I
SquarePants.
can hear the collective groans already.
Okay, Paul, don't act like you're above a little SpongeBob now and then. But
Yeah.
seriously, before you write this off as just another crazy episode, trust me, there's some serious academic weight behind this deep dive.
Oh, absolutely. We're wading into some fascinating research papers here, folks. This isn't just about goofing off with SpongeBob, although we'll probably end up doing some of that too.
Because, let's be real, who doesn't love a good Krabby Patty joke every now and then? But you're right. These researchers aren't messing around. They've gone full-on deep-sea exploration on this seemingly simple cartoon, and what they've surfaced is seriously impressive.
That's what I love about these deep dives. It's all about challenging our preconceived notions, peeling back the layers to uncover the hidden complexities of things we thought we knew. And trust me, you're in for a real treat because today's journey into the world of SpongeBob is jam-packed with aha moments. Get ready to see this beloved sponge in a whole new light.
Okay, you've sold me. So, where do we even begin? We've got a stack of research papers analyzing SpongeBob from all angles. What's first on our deep dive itinerary?
Let's start with something that sounds deceptively simple but gets complicated quickly. We're talking about the language used in SpongeBob. One of these papers breaks down the dialogue in a way you wouldn't believe, categorizing every single utterance, identifying patterns with almost surgical precision.
Okay, even I'm a little intimidated, and I'm supposed to be the linguistics enthusiast here. What can we learn from the way a cartoon sponge talks? I mean, he's not exactly dropping truth bombs about the human condition.
You might be surprised. See, the way we use language, even in a children's cartoon, can reveal a lot about the underlying messages and power dynamics at play. And what these researchers discovered about SpongeBob's speech patterns is pretty fascinating. Prepare to have your mind blown because they found that the most common type of utterance SpongeBob uses is what linguists call the directive.
Directive. Okay, time for a quick vocabulary lesson for our listeners who might not be fluent in linguistic jargon. What exactly is a directive, and why should we care?
Good point. It's all about breaking down those academic walls, right? So, in the simplest terms, a directive is basically a linguistic tool used to influence someone's actions. Think of it like a command or request, but with a fancy academic name. And SpongeBob, despite his innocent demeanor, is basically a master of directives. Think about it. How many times have you seen him convince Patrick to participate in some crazy scheme?
Oh gosh, countless times.
Yeah.
Patrick, we're starting a band. Or, Patrick, let's go jellyfishing, even though you're terrible at it.
Killer.
He's always dragging poor Patrick into these ridiculous situations.
And he does it with those directives. That's SpongeBob, the tiny, porous puppet master, pulling the strings of persuasion with his masterful command of language.
Okay, but is that just a fun fact about SpongeBob's communication style? Or is there something we can actually learn from this? I mean, it's not like we're all going to start speaking in directives like we're running around Bikini Bottom, are we?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Because here's the thing. Directives aren't just some abstract linguistic concept. They're woven into the fabric of our everyday communication. We use them all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. Understanding how they work, how to use them effectively, and even how to recognize them when someone else is trying to influence us. Those are valuable life skills.
Wait, are you telling me that by analyzing the way a cartoon sponge talks, we can actually become more persuasive communicators ourselves?
Yeah.
That's a lot of power for a guy who lives in a pineapple.
You got it. Who knew SpongeBob could be such an effective communication coach?
Okay, but SpongeBob, as a master of persuasive rhetoric, I never saw that coming. But we're not done with the surprising revelations yet, right? There's more to unpack in these research papers than just SpongeBob's way with words.
Oh, you know it. This next paper tackles something that I think a lot of us probably sensed intuitively, but maybe never really analyzed. Gender roles in SpongeBob.
Okay, yeah, now that you mention it, SpongeBob himself isn't exactly your typical macho dude, is he? He cries more than I do, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
Exactly. One of the papers we're looking at today argues that SpongeBob actually flips the script on traditional masculine stereotypes. Think about it. He's emotionally open, deeply compassionate, and honestly, he seems more comfortable doing things we typically associate with feminine roles like cooking and cleaning.
Oh, absolutely. Remember that episode where SpongeBob cries over his broken spatula? Like, I get it, spatulas are great, but the tears, The utter devastation. It was like he lost his best friend.
Exactly. And that's what's so interesting. SpongeBob's emotional vulnerability is always front and center, which goes against the grain of this idea that men need to be stoic and suppress their feelings.
And then there's Squidward, who's all about being sophisticated and cultured, but is also wound up tighter than a drum. I mean, maybe that's the joke going right over our heads as kids.
You might be onto something there. And then you have Sandy Cheeks living her best life in her underwater tree dome, rocking the astronaut suit, and just generally defying expectations. Talk about a role model. She's a scientist, an inventor, and she's not afraid to use her brain or her brawn to get things done.
Don't forget, she can also pack a mean karate chop. She puts Plankton in his place more than a few times.
Right. Sandy embodies this strong, independent female character who pushes back against those tired old stereotypes that try to limit women to passive roles. She's a great reminder that women can be just as capable, if not more so, than their male counterparts in any field they choose to pursue.
You know, it's amazing how much influence cartoons can have, especially on younger viewers. We often write them off as just entertainment, but they really do shape how kids understand the world around them, their place in it, and what's considered normal when it comes to things like gender roles.
Absolutely. And it's something we should all be more aware of, not just as parents or educators, but as consumers of media ourselves. Because whether it's intentional or not, the messages embedded in those seemingly innocent cartoons have a real impact on how we view gender and societal expectations.
It's like those cartoons are holding up this funhouse mirror to our own cultural biases and preconceptions. It makes you wonder what other subtle messages we're internalizing without even realizing it.
Precisely. And speaking of uncovering hidden layers and unexpected realities, are you ready to dive into maybe the most surprising twist in our SpongeBob deep dive?
You've got me on the edge of my seat. Hit me with it.
It's time to talk about Bikini Bottom, but not the cartoon version. I'm talking about the real Bikini Bottom.
Wait, the real Bikini Bottom. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm having a total Patrick Star moment right now, a little lost and confused. Can I get some context here? I mean, before today, all I knew about Bikini Bottom was that it was, well, at the bottom of the ocean, where SpongeBob and his pals lived. What's the real story?
Buckle up, my friend, because this is where our deep dive takes a bit of a somber but very important turn. One of these research papers we have goes deep into the real-life Bikini Atoll, and it turns out this place has a history as beautiful as it is tragically impacted by human actions.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely sensing a butt coming.
You got it. The Bikini Atoll, the namesake of our beloved cartoon setting, was actually the site of numerous nuclear weapons tests conducted by the United States in the mid-20th century.
Hold on, are you serious? Nuclear weapons tests? As in, the same Bikini Bottom where SpongeBob and Patrick are constantly blowing up their houses and chasing jellyfish? This just took an incredibly dark turn.
It did, didn't it? And that's exactly what makes this so thought-provoking. We have this beloved children's cartoon, known for its lighthearted humor and wacky adventures, set against a backdrop that carries the weight of a very real and very serious historical event.
So now I'm feeling like, well, isn't it a little irresponsible to create a children's cartoon set in a location with such a heavy, complicated history? Like, how much thought actually went into choosing that name Bikini Bottom anyway?
Yeah.
Was it deliberate or just a bizarre coincidence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, we don't really have a definitive answer, but you're right. It does raise important questions about the responsibility creators have when dealing with sensitive topics, especially when their audience includes young, impressionable viewers.
It feels almost impossible to reconcile the two in my head.
Hmm.
On one hand, you've got SpongeBob singing about the best day ever. And on the other hand, you have the real-life story of the Bikini Atoll and the Marshallese people who were displaced from their homes, exposed to radiation, all because of the nuclear testing program. It's a lot.
And that, my friend, is exactly the point. It's this jarring juxtaposition, this clash between these two seemingly disparate realities that forces us to think critically about the media we consume and the real-world contexts that might be hidden in plain sight. It's about understanding that even entertainment, even something as seemingly lighthearted as a cartoon, can be intertwined with complex, and in this case, tragic, historical events.
So what you're saying is we should be scrutinizing every cartoon, every TV show, every piece of media we encounter, looking for these potentially problematic backstories. I mean, where do we even draw the line? I mean, are we supposed to be playing detective with every cartoon we watch now? Where do we even draw the line?
It's not so much about becoming media detectives, but about cultivating that sense of awareness, that critical thinking muscle. Just because something's designed to make us laugh, it doesn't mean it exists in this bubble separate from real world issues.
So it's like keep our eyes peeled for those weird connections, those moments where the cartoon world bumps up against like actual history and stuff,
Yeah.
even if it makes us a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. And that's what I find so exciting about these kinds of deep dives. We take something familiar, something we might have brushed off as, oh, just a silly cartoon, and we uncover all these layers, this complexity we never knew existed.
Speaking of uncovering hidden depths, we've done some serious excavating today. We've explored SpongeBob's crazy effective way of using language, his unexpected defiance of gender stereotypes, and of course that really unsettling real-life history behind Bikini Bottom.
And if nothing else, I hope we've gained a better understanding of how important critical thinking is. We've got to stay curious, even about the stuff we think we already understand, even something as seemingly simple as SpongeBob.
So what's the big takeaway for our listeners who I'm sure are now looking at SpongeBob in a whole new light? What's the message we want them to carry away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is this: don't underestimate the power of curiosity. Even something as simple and fun as a cartoon can spark these really interesting conversations, about language, about gender, about history, even about ethics.
It's a good reminder that we can learn something new anywhere, anytime, as long as we're paying attention and asking questions. Who knew a sponge who lives in a pineapple could be such a profound teacher, right?
And on that note, I'll leave you with one final thought. Next time you encounter anything that seems simple, obvious, maybe even a little bit silly, take a closer look. Ask yourself, what am I missing here? What unexpected connections are waiting to be discovered?
I love that. Keep those brains firing, deep divers, and keep asking those tough questions. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the unexpected.